Much. It's really great to be here. I know a lot of my supporters are here.
Yep.
I know what we accomplished in South Florida, what we tried to accomplish in South Florida never could have happened if it weren't for a lot of you folks here, multiplied by thousands. You know, this is a great grassroots movement that's building. I'm not a politician, and you all know that. I've been a law professor for a couple of decades, teaching, been active politically, been trying to work for change. I was part of Occupy Wall Street movement. I was out there in Occupy LA at the time, actually. As a law professor, I've been writing about the Federal Reserve for years. Right over there, the Federal Reserve. Been criticizing the Fed as an anti-democratic institution. Completely anti-democratic. It's at the heart of what's wrong. There's so many things that's wrong right now in our politics. You take a look at the Federal Reserve. Since the financial crisis, it has showered Wall Street with trillions of dollars in low-interest loans. In 2009 and 2010 alone, the first 2 years after the crisis, $29 trillion in loans to Wall Street firms at 0.25%, while my law students are paying 7, 8, 9, 10% interest, while homeowners are still underwater 8 years after the financial crisis. This is a system that's upside down. The Federal Reserve is upside down. Our democracy is upside down. And we're here sitting and standing in a historic place. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. was right up there. The dreamer, the first dreamer, dream defender, Martin Luther King. And you've got Lincoln, the shadow of Abraham Lincoln, and those words inscribed on that wall. A democracy of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's what we're all here for. That's what my campaign was about in South Florida. You know, it was of the people. A couple of 100,000 contributions of $17 each. And we spent it on the ground. We built up an army of people knocking on doors. And at the peak of the campaign, we were knocking on 10,000 doors a week. I like to think that what happened in that campaign was we brought democracy alive. Democracy became a verb, not just a noun in South Florida in the summer of 2016. My job as the candidate was to keep speaking truth to power, and I had an army of volunteers and organizers that were speaking truth to the powerless. They were knocking on doors, having conversations. That's what democracy is about. It's not about these 30-second ads. It's not about super PACs. It's about real conversations between real people, a dialogue. And what my folks were doing on that campaign is what all of us are doing and what we have to keep doing. So since this campaign ended, I've got this big list of supporters, and a lot of you are on that list. And we could have turned around with our tail between our legs and said, oh well, we took it on the chin, there's not much we can do. This was round one. We're not quitting, we're in this for the fight. We can't quit, there's too much at stake, not just for us, but for future generations. So now I've got a group called Progress for All. It's right there up online, and we're doing it just the way the campaign did. We're taking small contributions, and we're pushing for democracy, for human rights for all. You know, you think about what is democracy about? Lincoln talks about of the people, by the people, and for the people. Democracy requires human rights. Human rights for everyone, for all. Progress and human rights for all. And not just here in this country, but around the world. Human rights for everyone.
Yeah.
Israelis, Palestinians, people in Iran, Iraq, you name it. All the hot spots of the world where people are being run over by a machine. We've been fighting the machine, we're going to keep fighting the machine. So Progress for All, you go to the website and you see what we're fighting for. And we've got 4 main issues right now. There are a lot more than 4 issues, I know it. But we got to start somewhere. And the first issue we got up there is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The TPP is what got me in this race to begin with. In the summer of 2015, I was just a lonely law professor uniting with folks from the Citizens Trade Campaign, lobbying the Florida congressional delegation against the TPP, against fast-tracking the TPP. And my congresswoman had a deaf ear, wouldn't meet with any of us. She was the only Democrat in Florida's House delegation to vote to fast-track that agreement. And because of that, we mounted a challenge to her. And we came close.
Yeah.
When I jumped in that race, nobody knew who I was. We knew who she was, the head of the Democratic National Committee who was rigging a presidential election campaign against Bernie Sanders. And that was reason to run against her enough. WikiLeaks has confirmed it. Absolutely, it keeps confirming it, what they've been doing, what the establishment has been doing. Running against the head of the DNC would have been impossible to do alone. I didn't do it alone. I jumped in without a penny of outside support, without a single endorsement. And folks were telling me, why are you doing this? This is crazy. You're not going to get anywhere. And it was clear to me we were going to get plenty where. We were going to get plenty far. That I was never alone, and that each step of the way, whenever the establishment came at us, whether it was Barack Obama endorsing Debbie Wasserman Schultz, or Joe Biden coming down to the district, or Hillary Clinton, or $1 million super PAC spending money against us, each time the grassroots stepped up. They stepped up by donating to the campaign. They stepped up by phone banking for us. I know there are a bunch of folks who have come up to me today and said, I made phone calls for you. I made contributions for you. Oh, I'm sorry, I only gave $15 contributions. No reason to apologize. Those contributions added up. It created an army on the ground. It showed what we can do together in the future. So the TPP is coming up probably in the month of November. It's got to be voted down, and it's going to be a lame duck Congress. And lame duck Congresses have done terrible things in the past. Now, I'm a law professor. I've been fighting the fight against Wall Street for years. I'll tell you, a lame duck Congress in December of 2000 deregulated derivatives. They helped transform our economy into a global casino. We got to be vigilant, and we got to be loud, and we got to keep speaking truth to power and to the powerless, waking people up. That's what this campaign was about. People are waking up. And nothing changes if people keep walking through life like in this comatose state, mesmerized by the Main Street media. You know, Donald Trump is the perfect candidate. People were mesmerized with The Apprentice, you know, or whatever the TV shows are of the moment. We got to keep shaking people and waking them up. In addition to the TPP, we're looking for political reform, and it doesn't stop with overturning Citizens United. It starts with overturning Citizens United. What we're going to be pushing for in the state of Florida through Progress for All are referendums. Referendums for open primaries, referendums for nonpartisan commissions to draw our district boundaries, and for election integrity. There's a reason every European democracy now has banned the voting machines. Paper ballots, counted by hand in public, reported immediately. True democracy. We're for ending this war on drugs. In Florida, we've got a historic referendum in a few weeks just for medical marijuana. California, the biggest state in the country, is about to legalize marijuana. Okay? And enough of locking folks up, disenfranchising them for life, making their lives harder for the rest of their lives just because of these nonviolent drug offenses. Enough of it already. And then fourth, but certainly not least, is to address climate change. You come to South Florida, you're going to see we're on the front line dealing with climate change. And the water is rising. The water is becoming more and more toxic. You know, Fukushima is still spewing radiation 24/7 into the ocean, and it is one ocean. We got to find solutions to that problem. We've got to ban fracking. You know, in my campaign, we started that campaign with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, all for fracking. Then she was, well, I'm for regulating fracking. And by the end, she was publicly saying she's against fracking. You know, it's easy to say it, gotta hold these folks' feet to the fire. And it's not enough to ban fracking, it's not enough to end the billions and billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies to the oil and gas industry. We gotta have subsidies for solar. Solar and wind and tidal and wave energy. There's so many new technologies the government, the taxpayer has to get behind, and we've got to keep advocating for. So I'm very heartened by the rally today. This year has been a historic election year, and it's going to seem to a lot of us, myself not least, that we have fallen short. But this is only the beginning. We have just started to fight. Thank you all so much. Thank you. There's a question here.
Jim, I heard that in the Miami-Dade area that the medical marijuana was left off the ballot on 100,000 ballots. Have you heard that?
I've heard that it was left off some ballots. I had no idea it was 100,000. Yep. Early voting has already started, so if it was left off of ballots, and certainly one would wonder why it was left off the ballots. You know, Sheldon Adelson, the billionaire who has spent so much money on Republican causes, has been spending money hand over fist to try to defeat medical marijuana. Medical marijuana fell short 2 years ago in Florida. It needed 60% of the vote to pass statewide, and it got about 58%. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was out there calling marijuana a gateway drug. And still, she wasn't sure in this campaign that I waged against her. She couldn't say whether she was for or against medical marijuana. These establishment politicians, we already know from WikiLeaks, a lot of them have private positions and public positions, right? It's time for us to step up and make sure that they live up to their public statements. Yeah. Any other questions? Am I going to run again? I honestly don't know, but I'll say I will not give up fighting. I will not give up fighting. And, you know, I don't want to be running again if elections are going to be rigged in any way. I'll say that. We've got to clean up our election process, including the way votes are counted. There's no doubt about that. But everybody here is here for a reason. None of us are going to give up fighting. And I don't regret for a moment that I stood up to run. You know, we had all the forces against us, and we never backed down, and we're never going to back down. And I'll tell you, everybody here has got to figure out what we're going to, each and every one of us are going to do in the future, not to back down. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.